Hey everyone, it's Nick here with you with the rock album review for the fourth studio album from the Pretty Reckless. It's called Death by Rock and Roll. Death by Rock and Roll is the follow-up to 2016's Who You Sellin' For, which is an album that I didn't really get into at the time, but I am a big fan of the Pretty Reckless album from 2014. It's called Going to Hell. That album is just stacked with great songs. You got the title track, you got Effed Up World, Heaven Knows, Follow Me Down. It's a great album, and actually I was on the radio at the time when that album came out, and I remember that a lot of those songs made really great radio tracks. They're huge rock songs that sounded great on FM rock radio, and the Pretty Reckless kind of brings together all the things that I love about rock. You got the big riffs, you got the big drums, you got the awesome vocals from Taylor Momsen. I really do love her voice. I'm not all that familiar with her work on television, on like Gossip Girl, but I did love her performance and How the Grinch Stole Christmas back in the day, and I really do love her voice. I love her work with the Pretty Reckless, and I was really looking forward to checking out this new album, Death by Rock and Roll. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run down the tracks on this album. I'm going to let you know which ones I really dug and maybe the ones that really didn't hit me as much. So we're going to kick things off with the title track on this record, Death by Rock and Roll, which is pretty much what you would expect from an opening track on a Pretty Reckless album. It's a huge rock song. I was actually watching an interview with Taylor Momsen on Rock Sound, and she was talking about how rock and roll is not just a genre of music. It's kind of like a way of life. It's an ethos. It's a work ethic. And I think this album and this song kind of just sums up that whole rock and roll vibe, and I thought this was a great opening track. Next up, we have Only Love Can Save Me Now, which features Matt Cameron and Kim Thayil of Soundgarden. And this song, it sounds like a Soundgarden song. It's got those sludgy guitars. It's got those awesome drums from Matt Cameron, who I think is pretty much one of the best drummers in all of rock and roll. And I could picture, Chris Cornell singing this song. May he rest in peace. I don't know if Taylor Momsen went into writing this track thinking, this is going to be a Soundgarden-esque song, or if she connected with the Soundgarden guys, and then, this song developed into that sound, but I really do love it. It's great to see some rock and roll legends appear on this album, so really love this track. It's got a very huge Soundgarden-esque sound. And then we're moving on to And So It Went, which is one of the singles from this record featuring Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave and Prophets of Rage, and he lays it down on this song. This is actually my favorite song on the album. It's anthemic, it's huge, which is what I go for when I listen to a big rock album like this. Tom Morello provides the goods. Taylor Momsen's voice sounds incredible. This was an awesome choice for a single, and it's definitely my favorite song on the record. Then we're moving on to a song called 25. Now this one reminded me of Frank Sinatra. I don't know if you know the song called 17, which is one of his classic songs. This song's called 25. I don't know if they were making that parallel when they were writing the song, but this is like a big band kind of song. You can picture Frank Sinatra singing it back in the day, and Taylor Momsen kind of really lays it on thick in a good way on this song, really laying into the vocals and making it super dramatic, Sinatra style. I really enjoyed the song called 25. And then we start moving into the middle of the album with a song called Got So High. This is like a mix of Guns N' Roses' Patience with Mazzy Star's Fade Into You. I don't know if you know that song. It's from the 90s. It was a very popular song. You probably heard it on a million TV shows and in a million movies. But this song brings together those two big influences. Guns N' Roses, a song like Patience, which is a powerful acoustic ballad with the kind of dreamy sounds of Mazzy Star from the 90s. I felt like Guns N' Roses was a big through line on this album. I don't know if Taylor Momsen and the Pretty Reckless crew are big Guns N' Roses fans, but you can definitely feel that influence, and I really loved the mashup of styles on Got So High. Then we get to another song called Standing at the Wall, which is another rock ballad on this album. You might see that theme throughout this review as I talk about the various tracks. This one is, again, like I said, another rock ballad, but it's a little bit more dramatic. It's kind of cool. I didn't really love it, but I do put it into the plus column on this record as we get into more rock ballads that I didn't dig so much. Another really strong rockin' track on this album is called Turning Gold. It starts out with some Indian sitar influenced sounds at the beginning and a really pulsing rhythm, a really great melody from Taylor Momsen. My only one complaint about this particular track was that I wish that it was pushed up earlier in the album. For me, the album loses a little bit of steam in the middle. It could use a little bit of a pick-me-up between all those rock ballads, and Turning Gold was kind of placed a little bit late in the record. I feel like it's kind of wasted. It should have been put up a little bit further. I think if Turning Gold was a little bit earlier in the album, overall, it might have been stronger for me. Then we get to a song called Rock and Roll Heaven. I was mentioning earlier that Taylor Momsen said that rock and roll is a lifestyle, it's an ethos, it's a work ethic, which I definitely agree with. And Rock and Roll Heaven kind of digs into a little bit more of the legend of rock and roll. It name drops a lot of artists that died in the 27 Club, like Jim Morrison. And there's a lot of I guess I consider them kind of cheesy references, but I did really enjoy the song because the melody was great. The references were cool, and it fit into the overall rock vibe of Death by Rock and Roll. So I like that song. Then we're going to get into the songs on this record that I didn't dig so much, starting with a song called My Bones, which to me was just a filler song. It was too long, it didn't go anywhere, and one of my complaints about this record is that the songs are all fairly long. Now, I'm not saying that every song has to adhere to that, that radio time of 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but a lot of these songs start ranging into the 4.5 minute to 5 minute mark. If the song is good, then you continue on that journey. You're like, oh, more song, 5 minutes, this is amazing. But when the song isn't good or isn't really hitting you like My Bones, it feels like a filler track. Those 5 minutes are just going to drag on forever. Another song that would go into the minus column for me on this album is called Broomsticks. This song is less than a minute long. It's a transitional track. It's short. I was just complaining about how the songs are too long. Now this one is too short, but it just felt like a filler track to me. On most albums, when bands do something like this and they put a song that's less than a minute long on it feels like a little bit of a waste. But because this album is pretty long, it's 50 minutes long, it's got 12 tracks, Broomsticks doesn't quite feel like a waste of time like it would on other albums, but still wasn't really anything for me. Kind of came and went, and I have to put it in the minus column for Death by Rock and Roll. Another song I didn't really dig is called Witches Burn. It's a little bit middle of the road. It's kind of filler. The vocal from Taylor is cool. She does some different kind of things on this song that I dug. It's got a really good guitar solo, but overall the melody and the song didn't really do much for me. Then we get to the final song on this album called Harley Darling. Now, there's nothing wrong with this song in particular. I'm not saying that it's a bad track. The only thing is that this album is it's stacked with acoustic rock ballads. I've mentioned them already in this review. And when I got to Harley Darling at the end of this 50-minute listening session of listening to this record, I couldn't do it anymore. I was worn out by the end. There was no way that I could do another rock ballad, which is one of my main complaints about this album, is that there's too much rock balladry happening. The Pretty Reckless is a hard rock band. The album starts out with a lot of hard rock tracks. It kind of peppers them out throughout the rest of the runtime, but by the end, after you have songs like Got So High, Standing at the Wall, Rock and Roll Heaven, and Harley Darling, even 25 if you want to call that a ballad, it was just too much. So by the time I got to this last track, I just couldn't do it anymore. That's one of my main complaints about this record. Too many rock ballads. And that's going to do it for my review of the new album from the Pretty Reckless called Death by Rock and Roll. I did really enjoy it. It's a great listen, but it is a little bit too long at around 50 minutes, 12 tracks. A lot of those songs are clocking in at over 5 minutes, and I just wish they'd kept things a little bit tighter. I was saying in my Foo Fighters review for Medicine at Midnight, which came out last week. If you haven't watched it yet, do that. But I was saying that the Foo Fighters really struck a nice balance on Medicine at Midnight, because it's only got 9 songs. So it leaves you wanting more. At the end of the 9 songs, you're like, what, that's it? But I think that might be the best approach. I never really thought of that before. I always thought, hey, it's an album, okay? If it's an album, it's got to have at least 10 tracks. But if you're going to, put out an album with 9 really great songs, well, then that's better than putting out 12 songs where about half of them are great and maybe half of them don't really do anything for you. So I wish that the Pretty Reckless had tightened things up on this record, but overall I did enjoy it. So I'm going to give Death by Rock and Roll by the Pretty Reckless a 7 out of 10. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching this rock album review. If you like this review, please give me a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our videos. And make sure you hop into the comments below and let me know what you thought of the new album from the Pretty Reckless. And we'll see you guys again for another rock album review. Have a good one.